many places can you walk through a Stone Age solar temple, medieval castle walls, rolling green fields of farmland, and then stand in a windswept shore beside an ancient church surrounded by the sea? Hi, I'm Justine, the nerdy half of the Breakaway Brave Hearts. And right now I'm crawling through a 4,000-year-old burial chamber in Anglesey, Wales. Wow! Anyone who loves nature needs to come to Anglesey. This is just stunning. And there are so many little walkways and pathways, all public access, but you gotta know where to find them. So stick with us till the end. We'll give you all the info you need, and we've saved the best till last. From heart-stopping coastal views to hidden historic treasures, lace up your boots and join Daryl and I as we discover the beauty of Anglesey, one step at a time. We're starting at what's often called the greatest castle never built. It's a fabulous place to walk around while you learn a bit of Welsh history. You see, the story behind it is kind of heartbreaking. So this is Beaumaris, one of Edward I's iron ring castles, which include Conwy and Denbigh. England's King Edward I started construction on the castle in 1295. Having fully conquered Wales a decade earlier. He was planning the largest and most sophisticated fortress in his campaign to control Wales, and he saw the coast of Anglesey, looking across the Irish Sea, as the perfect location for his perfect castle. But he started off rather less than perfectly, in one of Welsh history's most controversial episodes. Edward chose this piece of land because it was a perfect location. Now he knew it was perfect because there was already people living here who had made this into a very prosperous town. Ships came in and out of the harbour, supplying goods to locals that lived here in this small village. But they were in the way of Edward's castle. It didn't bother him. Over the next 50 years he had them completely relocated. The entire town was kicked out basically down the road to Newborough Forest, and their homes burnt down, erased, so that the land was cleared for Edward to build his perfect castle. Locals petitioned the king for the loss of their trade, their stolen houses, their ruined harbour, but their pleas fell on deaf ears. Welsh families who tried to remain faced harsh treatment, and no Welsh builders or tradesmen were allowed to work on the castle or live in the new town that was built up around it. This really deepened local resentment. Meanwhile, English workers flooded into the region. 2,000 people were employed to work on the project. Everything from artisans and craftsmen to just conscripted labour. Oh, yeah. That's fun, actually. The noise of blacksmiths working was a familiar sound at Beaumaris. Iron was shipped in for the blacksmiths to work with. So the walls actually went up rapidly. But they also cost a heck of a lot of money. You can walk inside the walls and it's really narrow, so you kind of get the feel of what life would have been like here for the soldiers trying to mill around. This was a top-of-the-line design. It had an innovative concentric layout, perfectly symmetrical walls, and advanced defences that would have made it one of the most architecturally sophisticated and militarily formidable fortresses of its era. And it had indoor plumbing. The latrines were cleverly built into the walls, with waste dropping into shafts that led to a common pit or directly into the moat, where the natural tides helped flush them clean. This design used seawater, which helped reduce the smell, and it improved sanitation. A big upgrade to your typical medieval castle. But all this innovation quickly pushed costs beyond the original budget. Edward ended up injecting, in today's equivalent, £3.75 million within a short period of time. But then his attention shifted to war in Scotland, not content with just adding Wales to his growing kingdom. But invasions cost money, and the funds for building Beaumaris were diverted to Edward's new war. And when the workforce realised they weren't going to get pay, they left. So construction slowed and eventually stopped for good. The grand towers, upper floors, and defensive turrets were never finished. A tragedy, really, considering not just the monetary cost, but the impact on the local lives and the businesses too. However, there was enough built for the castle to at least try and serve its purpose, to a degree. It was forced to surrender multiple times, and eventually it was neglected and stripped for building materials, a shadow of its former ambition. But for now, it serves a whole new purpose. Kadu have made these ruins a fabulous place to walk. There are a range of good walking surfaces, but you do want to make sure you have good grip shoes, and you're prepared for plenty of stairs. Give yourself lots of time because you want to explore everywhere. There is also a short film explaining the castle's history and interactive games for the kids. I loved the big soft blocks where you can make your own mini castle. I thoroughly recommend a visit to Beaumaris Castle. The information is fantastic, the layout makes it safe to walk around, and there's so many little nooks and crannies to explore, and that beautiful view. And if you're enjoying this video, please hit subscribe and the notifications bell. To be fair, there are beautiful views just about everywhere in Anglesey. Much of the coastline is walkable, as are the small towns along the coast and the piers that go out into the seaside. And then when you head inland, you are going to find a huge range of forest walks, tramps and scenic walking paths. But you gotta know where to find them. Ask a local. We had never heard of this little treasure. It's a river running through and you can cross over it on these beautiful stones, and a local told us where to find them. So they're very friendly. I've marked this spot on a map for you because it is a great place for a walk. Like many of Anglesey's walking paths, there are arrows and signposts to help you, but honestly they are not always so obvious, as they are quite small and they sometimes are in places that are overgrown. So again, don't be shy to ask a local. They'll give you some great insider advice. You might also want to check out Komoot, which will give you a huge range of options for both short and longer walks of differing challenge. Their maps are interactive, highly detailed, and regularly updated with community insights. Again, check out the link below for more details. Please note there is no affiliation or sponsorship. We just like to share good resources with everyone. We recommend their walks around Cwyfan, where you'll get to enjoy nature and you can walk right inside this 4,000-year-old burial chamber. It's pretty amazing. Bryn Celli Ddu, which translates as the mound in the dark grove, started life as a Neolithic henge, a circle of stones and ritual ditch, built about 5,000 years ago, and traces of the original henge are still visible around the mound. Later, a passage grave was built, a stone chamber for the burial of human remains, covered by a mound which can be entered by the passageway. The chamber is designed with an astonishingly incredible scientific insight. It is carefully aligned with the sun. So this was a burial chamber, but was also used as a kind of calendar for the farmers within the area. And in the summer solstice, the sun comes right through and hits that point exactly, lighting its way through the chamber and out the other side. So if you really want to see the true wisdom of the ancients, aim to visit on or around June the 21st. I'll pop the website below so you can get an update on that. On the summer solstice, there is usually some kind of local activity with singing and folk music as people greet the sun like their ancestors did centuries ago. There's one stone here that is a bit of a mystery to archaeologists. It's been shaped in some way, but they're not 100% sure what the purpose is and why and how it was put in here. Perhaps for sacrifices. Perhaps it was a sacred stone and contained a spirit. Now there is one or two modern additions, but we can be grateful for that. But the majority is the stone as it was created by the people who lived here 4,000 years ago. The site was used and revered over many centuries. During Roman times, Welsh druids and bards were once the keepers of the mound, and the spiritual lore and traditions then wove themselves into Welsh culture. Spirituality and religion has been a big part of Welsh culture and features heavily in their history, so I'm going to be taking a deep dive following the development of belief systems within Wales. I'm hoping to have that in the next week or two, so please hit subscribe and the notifications bell to make sure that you're there for that. But you can see that spirituality still alive today with modern offerings scattered throughout the cave. Many people who visit today still leave offerings. You can come in at any time. It's open 24/7. However, I wouldn't recommend it in the middle of the night. You don't actually need a torch. You can see pretty well inside there if the sun is out, but if you're coming in the middle of winter or at night time, you want to bring your own lighting. It's protected by carve, and they do offer tours, but you'll need to book those tickets online, and there's only a certain amount of hours that they're available, so go onto the website, which I've popped in the description below. Just to be fully transparent here, the mound is really quite small. I am walking back and forth, so it looks bigger than it really is. You don't need to allow a lot of time for this specific attraction. Just add in 20 minutes or so to your planned walk. I really love how carve has made this site completely open to the public, putting trust in visitors to show respect, which they do. Now, if you're driving rather than walking, just head to the car park. You'll find the pathway across the road. It's flat and easy to walk, taking no more than about 10 minutes from the car park. But if you're up for a longer walk, at least an hour each way, you could start at a nearby town with a record-breaking name. Roughly translating to the Church of Mary in the hollow of the White Hazel near the Fierce Whirlpool, and the Church of Tisleo by the Red Cave. Locals mainly shorten the name to Llanfair Pool or Llanfair PG. Llanfair can lay claim to having the longest place name in Europe. It's 58 letters long. It turns out they actually originally conceived this name as a publicity stunt in the 19th century to attract tourists and boost the local economy. And it succeeded. You'll have to line up for a photo. The name really is a bit of fun, but you're going to need some serious practice to be able to pull it off, like this impressive weather presenter.
Just up the road from Llanfair to Pwllgwyngyll go get a Quindrobol, Llan Tysilio go. The temperature got to 21 Celsius.
But I just want to go off script here and point out that it is not actually the longest place name in the world. We have one that is 85 letters long. Taumatawhakitanga, I'm not going to be able to say the whole thing, I'm sorry, holds the Guinness World Record for the longest place name in the world. Llanfair Pool is just one of the many intriguing little Welsh villages with cafes and restaurants that'll keep you entertained between your walks around Anglesey. I've saved my favourite walk until last, a coastal walk to one of Anglesey's quirkiest sites, St Cwyfan's Church. This is the church in the sea. To get to the church, we recommend parking Aberfraw Beach Car Park, which has free parking, and then heading off to the signposted path. It's a really fabulous walk across the riverbank, the dunes, the rocky coastline, green farmland, and finally the stony beach out to the church. So make sure you bring some water, wear a hat, and check the tide times before you come. If you come at high tide, you won't be able to get across to this very special little spot. The church is dedicated to Saint Cwyfan, or Cwyfan in Welsh, an Irish saint born around the year 498, and he was known for his extraordinary closeness to animals and birds. His connection to Wales is likely through his missionary work and his followers. His disciples travelled across the Irish Sea to this beautiful coastline. The building itself dates from the 12th century, but there's likely been a Christian community here since the 7th century. It was originally set on a peninsula, but erosion has cut it off from the mainland, leaving just the block of man-made stone underneath. Worshippers continue to cross over through the tide sometimes to this special place of worship. The church has had quite a history. In the 18th century, there was a famous controversy when the Bishop of Bangor appointed an English-speaking priest to a mostly Welsh-speaking parish. Locals protested and ended up with a win. The church is now locked up most of the time, but you can peer through the spiderwebs in the windows. It actually still operates, holding monthly Sunday services and the occasional wedding. It's a beautifully peaceful sight, and I really encourage a visit. But bring your camera, because against this fabulous backdrop, the church and the old gravestones make for fantastic photo ops. And you'll definitely need to wear boots with good grip. The rocks get slippery. But most importantly, remember to keep your eye on the time, as the tide will rise and you will still have to walk back. And that's Anglesey. Castles, ancient tombs, wild beaches, magical forests, and stories on every corner. Whether you're after epic history, outdoor adventure, or a peaceful moment by the sea, this Welsh gem delivers. Thanks for exploring with us, and don't forget to subscribe and drop a comment with your favourite Anglesey spot or a travel tip of your own. I hope you've enjoyed this little exploration of Anglesey. I'm not sure where I'm off to next time. It'll be a surprise to both of us. Wherever it is, I hope I'll see you there. Until then, happy travels everyone.